The doorbell rang unexpectedly, startling Sarah. She was standing at the stove, stirring oatmeal that was about to boil over. Lily, her 5-year-old daughter, sat at the table, swinging her legs and intently coloring a princess in her coloring book, while Alex, her 11-year-old son, was buried in his textbook, preparing for a test. "Who could that be at this hour?" Sarah muttered, turning off the gas and wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. Her heart skipped a beat uncomfortably. Over the past 3 months, she'd grown accustomed to fearing unexpected rings and knocks at the door. First it was collection agencies, then a process server with papers, and last time, a bank representative with a notice of mortgage delinquency. All these visitors had entered her life after Michael left. The doorbell rang again, more insistently. "Alex, keep an eye on your sister," Sarah asked, heading to the hallway. She approached the door and peered through the peephole. An elderly woman stood on the landing with 2 large bags. Patricia Ann, her mother-in-law. Sarah's breath caught. They hadn't seen each other in over 6 months, since Michael had forbidden bringing the kids to his parents, citing work overload and a desire to spend weekends just with the family. Now Sarah understood the real reason. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Patricia Ann. "Hello?" Sarah tried to smile, feeling her lips tremble betrayingly. "Hello, dear Sarah." Her mother-in-law beamed, setting the bags down. "I decided to surprise you all. I've missed my grandkids terribly. And all of you too." Patricia Ann, a stately 60-year-old woman with a short haircut dyed chestnut brown, radiated energy and joy. Despite her age, she always looked elegant and fit, a habit from her days as a vice principal at a school. "Come in, of course." Sarah stepped aside, frantically thinking how to break the news to her mother-in-law. Patricia Ann entered the hallway, looked around, and immediately frowned. Her attention was drawn to the nearly empty coat rack. Michael's men's jackets and coats were gone, his boots and sneakers that usually stood by the wall had disappeared. Even the umbrella he never parted with was missing. "Where are Michael's things?" she asked, slowly removing her coat. "Is he on a business trip?" Before Sarah could answer, Lily peeked out from the kitchen. Seeing her grandma, she squealed and rushed toward her. "Grammy!" "Grammy's here!" the girl shouted, hugging Patricia Ann's legs. "Lily, my treasure!" Her mother-in-law bent down, lifting her granddaughter into her arms. "How you've grown. You'll be as tall as me soon." Alex appeared behind his sister. Unlike the open and spontaneous Lily, the boy was wary. He stopped in the doorway, shoving his hands into the pockets of his home pants. "Hello, Grandma," he said quietly. Patricia Ann set Lily down and approached her grandson with open arms. "Alex, you've gotten so big. A real young man." Alex awkwardly hugged his grandma, as if afraid of doing something wrong. Sarah noticed him glance quickly at her, seeking support. In that look, she read anxiety and a silent question. "What now?" "Come into the kitchen, Patricia Ann," Sarah suggested. "I'm just making breakfast." "You're probably hungry from the trip." "What trip?" Her mother-in-law waved it off. 3 hours by car, but I won't say no to a cup of tea." She entered the kitchen, still holding Lily's hand. The girl chattered non-stop, telling her grandma about her new doll and how she'd learned to tie her shoelaces at preschool all by herself. Alex quietly followed them, casting another anxious glance at his mother. In the kitchen, Patricia Ann immediately noticed more details indicating something was wrong in the family. Michael's collection of mugs, which always stood on a special shelf, was gone. On the fridge, his favorite magnet in the shape of a beer cap, brought from a trip to Europe, was missing. But most importantly, the tension in the air was almost tangible. "Kids," Sarah said, "show Grandma the drawings you've made recently, while I finish the oatmeal and brew the tea." Lily happily ran to her room for her sketchbook, and Alex, hesitating, followed his sister. As soon as the children left, Patricia Ann turned to her daughter-in-law, her face serious. "Sarah, dear, what's happened? Where's Michael?" Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat. For 3 months, she'd held it together, trying to be strong for the kids, not allowing herself to break down. But now, under her mother-in-law's piercing gaze, all the walls she'd built around herself began to crumble. "Michael left us, Patricia Ann," she said quietly, turning back to the stove. 3 months ago." "What do you mean, left?" Her mother-in-law sank into a chair, not taking her eyes off. "Sarah, left for where?" "For another woman." his young colleague from the marketing department. Sarah spoke quietly, almost in a whisper, afraid the kids might hear. She dished out the oatmeal into bowls, her hands visibly shaking, making the spoon clatter against the edges. And he's taking the house too. Or rather, he's in the process. We have 2 weeks left to move out. He won the case because the house was bought before the marriage. He just backdated the documents through his friend at the county recorder's office. Patricia Ann sat silently, as if stunned by the news. Sarah finally turned to her with a full bowl in hand and saw that her mother-in-law's face had turned ashen grey. "I don't understand," Patricia Ann said slowly. "How is this possible? Why didn't he tell us anything? We talked on the phone every week. He said everything was fine, that you were planning to visit us at the cabin this summer as a family." Her voice trembled and she fell silent, pressing her hand to her mouth. At that moment, Lily burst into the kitchen with her sketchbook. "Grammy, look what princess I drew," the girl exclaimed, holding out the book. "This is Princess Elsa. She can freeze everything." Alex entered behind her, holding his school art notebook. He quietly placed it on the table without a word. "What a beautiful princess." Patricia Ann ruffled her granddaughter's hair, trying to compose herself. "And what did you draw, Alex dear?" Alex shrugged. "It's just an art assignment, a landscape." Patricia Ann opened the notebook and saw a carefully drawn picture of a cabin against a forest background. It was their family cabin, where they used to spend summer weekends together. On the porch were tiny figures: Grandpa, Grandma, Mom, Alex himself, and Lily. The father's figure was absent. Patricia Ann's heart ached with pain. She gently traced her finger over the drawing. "Very beautiful, Alex. You're a real artist." The boy nodded vaguely and sat at the table. "Let's eat breakfast," Sarah said, placing bowls of oatmeal in front of everyone. "Then I'll take Lily to preschool and Alex to school." "I can walk the kids," Patricia Ann offered. "You're probably rushing to work." "I have the day off today," Sarah replied. "I work a rotating schedule, 3 on, 3 off. My main job is at the store, and evenings I freelance remotely. I transcribe audio recordings." "2 jobs?" Her mother-in-law looked at her with concern. "Sarah, dear, how do you manage?" "I manage." Sarah tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "No choice. Michael filed for a lump sum child support payment instead of monthly ones. I agreed because we need money for the down payment on a new place. But it's still not enough. I have to make up the difference." During breakfast, Lily chattered non-stop, telling her grandma about preschool, her friends, and toys. Alex ate silently, occasionally giving monosyllabic answers to his grandma's questions. Patricia Ann tried to keep the conversation going, but Sarah could see her mother-in-law was deeply shaken and struggling to hide it from the kids. When breakfast ended, Sarah sent the children to get ready. "I'll walk them, and then we'll talk," she said to her mother-in-law. "You probably have a lot of questions?" "Yes, Sarah dear," Patricia Ann replied quietly. "A lot." Sarah nodded and went to help Lily dress. She felt a strange relief from finally sharing her troubles with someone older. All these months, she'd tried not to worry her own parents, who lived in another city and barely made ends meet on their pensions. But now, with her mother-in-law here, it somehow felt a little easier. Though Sarah understood that for Patricia Ann, this news was a terrible blow. When she returned to the kitchen for the cups, she saw her mother-in-law sitting motionless, staring at one point. Tears streamed from the elderly woman's eyes, which she didn't even try to wipe away. "Patricia Ann," Sarah gently touched her mother-in-law's shoulder. "I'll walk the kids and be back. We'll discuss everything." Her mother-in-law nodded silently, wiping her tears with the edge of a handkerchief. In the half-hour Sarah was walking the kids, she tried to gather her thoughts. It seemed like the world had turned upside down. Just yesterday, she thought she was coming to congratulate her beloved son's family on the past winter holidays and bring treats for the grandkids. And today, she learned that her son had abandoned his wife and children and was even depriving them of a roof over their heads. When Sarah returned, Patricia Ann had already tidied the kitchen and laid out the treats she'd brought from the countryside. Jars of pickles, jam, honey, homemade sausages from the neighbor farmer, and fresh eggs. "Come, sit down," her mother-in-law said, pouring tea into cups. "Tell me everything from the beginning." Sarah sank heavily into the chair. "Where did this story begin?" Maybe 3 months ago, when Michael announced his departure. Or a year and a half ago, when he started staying late at work, citing important projects. Or 8 years ago, when Alex was born, and Michael first said family life was starting to weigh on him. Everything was fine until it wasn't, she finally said, cupping the mug in her palms as if trying to warm herself with its heat. First, there were just late nights at work, then business trips. I didn't pay attention. Michael was always ambitious. I supported his career. She took a sip of tea, trying to steady her trembling voice. 6 months ago, a new employee named Jessica joined their department. 26 years old, fresh out of business school with honors and sky-high ambitions. Michael first talked about her with admiration, then stopped mentioning her altogether. And then? Then late-night phone calls, messages he answered while turning the screen away. Classic story, right? Sarah smiled bitterly. 3 months ago, he just packed his things and left. Said he loved another, that with Jessica he had real feelings. And with me, apparently, everything turned into routine and daily grind. Patricia Ann sat motionless, her fingers gripping the cup so tightly they turned white from strain. "Why didn't you call us?" she asked quietly. "Why didn't you say anything? What would it change?" Sarah shrugged. "You have your own problems. Robert James had a second heart attack last year. Why worry you?" "We're family, Sarah dear." Her mother-in-law's voice trembled. "In a family, we share not only joys, but also sorrows." "What family are we now?" Sarah said bitterly. "Michael filed for divorce right away. We were divorced in a month. He had all the papers ready in advance. And then the fun began. It turned out the house we chose together, that we furnished over years, legally belongs only to him. He bought it supposedly before our wedding. Though in reality, we paid the loan together for the first 5 years. How can that be?" Patricia Ann frowned. "After all, your father and I gave you money for the down payment after your wedding. I remember exactly. The wedding was in June, and we transferred the money in August." "Exactly." Sarah nodded. "But in court, Michael had documents proving the house was bought in April before the wedding. His friend David Thompson works at the county recorder's office. You know him. He was at our wedding. He helped backdate it." Patricia Ann shook her head, unable to believe her son was capable of that. "I could have fought it in court," Sarah continued, "but I had no proof. The documents we signed stayed with Michael. And the receipts from you. I don't even know if they're still around." "We should have a copy," Patricia Ann said thoughtfully. "Robert was always meticulous with finances. We need to check his papers." Sarah shrugged. "It's too late. The court ruled in Michael's favor. I have no strength or money to sue further. We have to vacate the house in 2 weeks. And where will you go?" Patricia Ann leaned closer. "I found a small 2-bedroom on the outskirts in an old 5-story building. Cheap, but a roof over our heads. The neighborhood isn't the safest. The school there is worse than the current one, but no choice. The down payment will come from the money Michael paid instead of monthly child support, and then I'll pay from my salary and side jobs." "But that's unfair," her mother-in-law exclaimed. "He can't just throw you out on the street." "He can," Sarah smiled sadly. "Legally, he can if the house is his. And as it turns out, Michael has issues with morals." They fell silent. Outside the window, the February sun timidly broke through, but its weak rays weren't enough to dispel the chill that had settled in the kitchen. "And the kids?" Patricia Ann finally asked. "How are they?" Sarah sighed. "Lily keeps asking when Dad will come back. She doesn't understand what's happening. Thinks he's just away on work, like before. Alex. Alex knows everything. He overheard our last conversation with Michael. Now he barely talks, withdrawn into himself. Problems started at school. The teacher says he's become aggressive with classmates. Does Michael see the kids? By court order, he's allowed visits twice a month. He's come only twice in all this time. Brought gifts, walked with Lily in the park for a couple hours. Couldn't even talk properly with Alex. The boy refuses to communicate with him." "Lord," Patricia Ann whispered, covering her face with her hands. "How could he? How could my son do this?" Sarah gently stroked her mother-in-law's shoulder. "Don't blame yourself, Patricia Ann. It's not your fault. You raised him to be a good person. Sometimes people just change. Her mother-in-law raised her tear-filled eyes to her. But I'm his mother. That means I must have gone wrong somewhere in his upbringing. Didn't instill the right values, didn't. She trailed off, bursting into sobs again. Sarah pushed a box of tissues toward her. Will you stay the night here? She asked, changing the subject. Of course, Patricia Ann dabbed her eyes. If you don't mind, I want to spend some time with my grandkids. I'll be glad, Sarah said sincerely. The kids miss you, especially now. Patricia Ann suddenly straightened and said resolutely, I'll call Michael right now. No, Sarah panicked. It won't change anything. It'll just upset you more. I must, her mother-in-law said firmly. I need to hear from him how he could do this. She pulled an old flip phone from her purse and decisively pressed speed dial. Michael's phone rang. I'm not sure he'll pick up, Sarah warned. He rarely answers my calls, but Michael answered after the fourth ring. Mom? His voice sounded surprised. Is something wrong? Something is wrong, son. Something is. Patricia Ann tried to speak calmly, but Sarah saw her hands shaking. I came to visit you all, and it turns out you're not here. And haven't been for a long time. There was silence on the other end. Michael, what are you doing? Her mother-in-law continued. Abandoning your wife and kids, kicking them out of the house. Mum, this isn't a phone conversation, Michael interrupted. You're emotional right now. Sarah must have told you all sorts of things. What is there to say? Patricia Ann raised her voice. I see with my own eyes the empty house without your things. I see how your son draws our cabin without you in the picture. How your daughter asks when Dad will return from his business trip. Have you lost your mind? Mum, Michael's voice hardened. This is my personal business. I have a right to happiness. With Sarah, it's been over for a long time. We were just going through the motions. I met someone with whom... What happiness, Michael? His mother interrupted. And the kids? Are they an obstacle to your happiness? You didn't just leave for another woman. You're depriving your children of a roof over their heads. You forged documents to take the house from them. I didn't forge anything, Michael snapped. Everything's legal. And anyway, I compensated Sarah for all expenses. She got money instead of child support. It's enough for a down payment on a new place. So that's how you think now? Patricia Ann's voice trembled. That everything can be measured in money. That you can buy freedom from responsibility for your children. Mom, stop lecturing me like a child, Michael hissed. I'm 36. I decide how to live my life. I'm 61, and your father is 65, Patricia Ann countered, and we still answer for our actions. Age has nothing to do with it. She took a breath and continued more calmly. Michael, think again. You have a wonderful family, amazing kids. This Jessica, she's young, beautiful, but... Don't talk about her like that, Michael cut her off. You don't even know her. Fine, his mother agreed. I don't know her, but I know you. And I know you're making the biggest mistake of your life. You're crossing out everything your father and I tried to instill in you. Mum, let's end this conversation, Michael said wearily. I value your opinion, but the decision is made. The divorce is finalized. The house is mine by court order. Sarah got compensation. I'll see the kids on weekends when I can. When you can, Patricia Ann repeated, meaning when your new girlfriend allows it. Or when you don't have more important things. Stop, Michael barked. I don't have to report to you. Or to Sarah, for that matter. Patricia Ann sighed deeply. Fine, don't want to talk to me? Don't. But do one thing. Come tonight, talk to your children, look them in the eyes, and explain why they're being evicted from home. I can't tonight. I have a meeting. So the meeting is more important than your kids? Her mother-in-law's voice rang with tension. Fine, that's what I'll tell Alex and Lily. Dad won't come. He has a more important meeting than you. Mom, Michael exclaimed indignantly. What, Mom? Patricia Ann didn't back down. I've protected you all my life. Even when you broke the school window in 8th grade, I went to the principal and took the blame. Said I accidentally opened the sash when I came to pick you up. Remember? I remember, Michael admitted reluctantly. And remember how in college you flunked the semester and I begged your dean for another chance. And how your father and I paid off your first loan when you lost your job. Why are you bringing all this up? Michael asked irritably. Because parents always protect their children, Patricia Ann said firmly, even when they're wrong. But now you've crossed a line where I can't protect you or even understand you." There was silence on the other end again. "I'll come tomorrow," Michael finally said, "after work, around 7. "Good," Patricia Ann agreed. "I'll be waiting." She hung up and placed the phone on the table. Her hands shook so much she had to clasp them together. "He'll come tomorrow," she told Sarah, "though I'm not sure he'll keep his promise." Sarah shrugged. "He's promised the kids before and cancelled at the last minute. They're used to it." "My son doesn't act like that," Patricia Ann said firmly, "or he's not my son anymore. I don't recognize him." She paused, gathering her thoughts, then stood resolutely. "We have to do something. Can't just sit idle. Sarah, show me your financial situation. How much do you have for the down payment? How much is that place you looked at? What documents are needed for the deal?" Sarah looked at her mother-in-law in surprise. "Why do you need that?" "Because I won't let you live in some dangerous neighborhood where Alex will be bullied by thugs and Lily can't play in the yard unsupervised. We'll figure something out." "But Patricia Ann," Sarah faltered, "this isn't your concern." "You're not obligated." "These are my grandkids," her mother-in-law cut her off. "And you. Your family too, no matter what Michael decided. You don't abandon family in trouble. That's how my parents raised me, how Robert and I raised Michael. And if he's forgotten that simple truth, I'll have to remind him." Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat again, but this time from gratitude. For the first time in 3 months, she didn't feel completely alone in her struggle. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to say more. Patricia Ann squeezed her hand encouragingly. "No need, my girl. You've held up so well all this time. Now it's my turn to be strong." They sat in the kitchen for a long time, sorting papers and discussing options. Patricia Ann insisted that she and her husband could sell the cabin and help buy a decent house in a good neighborhood. Sarah refused, saying she couldn't accept such a sacrifice. In the end, they decided to postpone that talk until Michael's visit. Patricia Ann hoped she could get through to her son and make him reconsider the eviction. "If he really loves his children," she said, "he won't let them live in a dangerous place. Even if he doesn't want to be with you, he should provide normal conditions for the kids." Sarah just shook her head. "You don't know how he's changed, Patricia Ann. It's like he's been replaced." "We'll see," her mother-in-law said stubbornly. "We'll see tomorrow." Closer to lunch, Sarah started getting ready to pick up Lily from preschool. "Maybe we'll go together," Patricia Ann suggested, "and then for Alex at school." Sarah nodded gratefully. "Lily will be thrilled. She talked about you all the way to preschool." They dressed and stepped out into the frosty February day. Patricia Ann took Sarah's arm, and they slowly walked along the snow-covered street to the preschool. "You know," her mother-in-law said thoughtfully, "I always dreamed of a daughter, but God gave us only Michael. Then you came along, and I thought, here's the daughter I dreamed of. Smart, kind, caring. You've always been and will be like my own to me. No matter what happens." Sarah squeezed her mother-in-law's arm tighter, unable to speak from the flood of emotions. "We'll manage," Patricia Ann said confidently. "All together, you'll see." And at that moment, Sarah truly believed things could get better. The next day started with breakfast preparation. Patricia Ann woke up before everyone and was already bustling in the kitchen when a sleepy Sarah came out of the bedroom. "Good morning," her mother-in-law smiled. "How did you sleep?" "First time in a long while." "Well," Sarah admitted, "I don't even remember the last time I slept without sleeping pills." Patricia Ann shook her head but said nothing. Instead, she placed a plate of golden pancakes on the table. "I thought the kids would love waking up to the smell of Grandma's pancakes. I remember Michael as a kid could smell them even through a closed door." At the mention of her son, her face darkened, but she quickly composed herself. "We have an important day today," she said, returning to the stove. "Need to eat well." Soon the kids appeared. Lily, seeing the pancakes, jumped for joy. "Grammy's pancakes! Like at the cabin," she exclaimed, climbing onto her chair. "With condensed milk." "Of course, my treasure." Patricia Ann pulled a can of condensed milk from her bag. "And raspberry jam I brought, and honey from our beehive." Alex came last, still sleepy and grumpy, but even he couldn't hold back a smile at the pancakes. "Good morning," he said, sitting at the table. "Smells good." "Praise for the chef," his grandma winked, piling pancakes on his plate. "Eat up, Build your strength. After school, we have a serious talk. Alex looked questioningly at his mother. Sarah hesitated, unsure what to say. Dad's coming tonight, she finally said. Grandma talked to him yesterday. The boy's face darkened instantly. He set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. I don't want to see him, he muttered. Let him go to his new family. Alex, Sarah scolded. Don't say that. Why? It's true. He has a new family now, without us. Patricia Ann sat next to her grandson and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. I understand you're hurt, Alex dear, and you have every right to be angry. But still, give Dad a chance to talk to you. Sometimes adults make mistakes, stupid, unforgivable mistakes, and regret them later. He doesn't regret it, Alex said stubbornly. He's happy with her. Maybe it seems that way now, his grandma said softly. But you know, true happiness can't be built on someone else's unhappiness. Sooner or later, everyone realizes that. I hope your dad will too. Alex said nothing but picked up his fork again and started eating, avoiding the adult's eyes. Lily, who during this conversation was enthusiastically smearing condensed milk on her pancake, suddenly looked up. Will Dad bring me a doll? He promised last time. I don't know, sweetie, Sarah sighed. Let's not guess. After breakfast, they walked the kids to school and preschool. The day was frosty but sunny. The February sun reflected brightly off the snow, making them squint. Let's stop by the church, Patricia Ann suddenly suggested as they passed a small chapel. Light some candles. Sarah nodded. She wasn't particularly religious, but now she felt a need for some higher support. The church was quiet and almost empty. Only an elderly woman was polishing icons, and the priest in the far corner was talking to a parishioner. Patricia Ann bought several candles and handed some to Sarah. For the health of all of us, she said, lighting the first. For Michael to come to his senses, the second candle. And for a happy resolution to all problems, the third. They stood in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts, then stepped out into the frosty air. I once taught Michael that the most important thing in life isn't money or career, but a clear conscience, Patricia Ann said thoughtfully as they slowly walked along the snow-covered street. I told him, son, before bed, ask yourself if you hurt anyone today, caused pain with words or actions, and if yes, fix it tomorrow, and now I wonder if he ever heard me. He heard Patricia Ann. Sarah took her mother-in-law's arm. Michael was a good husband and father for many years. Kind, caring. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe midlife crisis. Maybe he just met a woman who turned his head. In any case, it's not your fault. Thank you, Sarah dear. Her mother-in-law gratefully squeezed her hand. But a mother's heart still feels guilt. Maybe we should have visited more, paid more attention. Maybe your father and I missed something in his upbringing. Sarah shook her head. Don't blame yourself. You're wonderful parents, and Robert James is the best father-in-law one could dream of. Michael made his own choice and must answer for the consequences. They reached home and spent the rest of the day preparing for Michael's visit. Patricia Ann insisted on cooking his favorite dishes, beef stew and mashed potatoes with meatloaf, like in his childhood. Sarah didn't object, though she doubted culinary masterpieces could melt the ice between them. By 6 o'clock, everything was ready. The kids returned from school and preschool, did their homework, and were now watching cartoons in the living room. Sarah set the table, carefully arranging plates and utensils. She caught herself feeling nervous, like on a first date, and got angry at herself for that weakness. Stop being nervous, Patricia Ann noticed her state. You did nothing wrong to fear this meeting. It's Michael who should be ashamed, not you. At 7, the doorbell rang. This time, Lily jumped off the couch and ran to the hallway. Dad's here. Dad, she shouted excitedly. Alex stayed seated, only gripping the TV remote tighter, staring at the screen. Sarah took a deep breath and went to open the door. Patricia Ann stood beside her, as if ready to support if needed. Michael stood on the threshold, so familiar and yet so strange. He looked good, new stylish haircut, expensive coat, groomed stubble. In his hands, a big bag of gifts. In 3 months, he'd noticeably slimmed down and looked 5 years younger. Hi, he said, shifting his gaze from his wife to his mother. Can I come in? Of course it's your house. Sarah couldn't resist the jab, stepping aside. Michael winced but stayed silent. He entered the hallway, where Lily immediately attacked him, hanging on his neck. "Daddy, I missed you so much." "Look, Grandma's here." "I see, baby." He kissed his daughter's crown. "I missed you too." He gently set Lily down and turned to his mother. "Mom," he began, but Patricia Ann interrupted, raising her hand. "We'll talk later," she said coldly. "The kids come first now." Michael nodded and went into the living room. Alex was still on the couch, not looking up. "Hi, son," Michael said, sitting beside him. "How's school?" "Fine," Alex muttered, not glancing at his father. "I brought gifts for you." Michael placed the bag on the table. "A new gaming console for you, the one you've wanted for so long. And a doll for Lily, as promised." He pulled out the console box and handed it to his son. Alex didn't even look at it. "I don't need anything from you," he said quietly but firmly. "Better if you didn't kick us out of the house." Michael paled and shot a quick glance at Sarah, standing in the doorway. "Alex, it's a complicated situation," he began. "Nothing complicated," his son interrupted. "You left us and now you're kicking us out." Simple. He stood and headed out of the room. Passing his mother, he said quietly, "I'll be in my room." Sarah nodded, watching her son with pain. Lily, not noticing the tension, was already digging in the bag. "Where's my doll?" she asked, rummaging through. "Here it is." She pulled out a box with a large doll in a fluffy dress excitedly. "Thanks, Daddy. She's so beautiful, like a real princess." "You're welcome, baby." Michael smiled, but it was strained. "Why don't you go show the doll to Grandma in the kitchen? And we'll talk with Mom." "Okay." Lily ran happily to the kitchen. "Grammy, look what Dad gave me." When they were alone, Michael sighed heavily. "Alex totally hates me, huh?" "What did you expect?" Sarah crossed her arms. "That he'd jump for joy when his father abandons the family and kicks them out." "I'm not kicking anyone out," Michael winced. "I offered a compromise, gave money for a down payment on a new place." "In a dangerous neighborhood," Sarah noted, "where there's no decent school, where it's scary to go out at night, with addicts in the stairwells and drunken fights overnight." "Don't dramatize," Michael dismissed. "A regular suburban area. Maybe not as upscale as this, but decent enough." "Was decent 20 years ago," Sarah objected. "Now the police arrest someone every month. But of course you don't care. You won't live there." Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Sarah knew well. He always did that when nervous or guilty. "Listen, I get that you're angry." "Angry?" Sarah smiled bitterly. "That's putting it mildly. You destroyed our family, deceived me with the house documents, lied to your parents for months, and now you say I'm angry." At that moment, Patricia Ann entered the room. She was wiping her hands on a kitchen towel, her eyes full of determination. "Lily's playing with her new doll," she said, "and it's time we had a serious talk, all together." She sat in the armchair opposite Michael and looked at her son intently. "Michael, I won't lecture or shame you. You're an adult and responsible for your actions. But I want you to understand what they'll lead to." Michael tensed, bracing for another attack, but his mother continued calmly. "First, you're losing your son's respect. Alex is at an age where he's forming his idea of what a man, husband, father should be. By your example, you're showing him it's okay to abandon family when it becomes a burden, to deceive your wife for personal gain, to forge documents and use connections for selfish purposes. Is that what you want for your son?" Michael lowered his eyes. "Second, you're losing not just your wife, but your children. Do you think Alex will ever want to spend time with you voluntarily, not by court order? Do you think Lily won't understand when she grows up why you and Mom split? Do you think your new companion will always be there? What if in 5 or 10 years she wants someone younger too?" "Mum, don't start," Michael said irritably. "I'm not done," Patricia Ann said firmly. "Third, you're losing your father's and my respect. We raised you differently, taught you to be honest, responsible, to care for loved ones. Such actions don't just disappoint us, Michael. They break our hearts." Heavy silence hung in the room. Michael sat with his head down, nervously twisting his wedding ring on his finger, which Sarah noticed he still wore. "And what do you suggest?" he finally asked. "That I return to the family I destroyed?" Pretend everything's fine when it's not. I made a choice, Mom, and I have to live with it. You don't have to return if you really love another woman, Patricia Ann said, but you can act humanely. Leave the house to Sarah and the kids, or buy them an equivalent one in a normal neighborhood if you want this one so badly. After all, you're in a managerial position. Your salary allows you to support 2 women and children. Michael shook his head. Mom, you don't understand. I have loans, a mortgage on a second house. I can't just buy another one. And why the loans? Sarah interjected. Because of the car you bought last year. Trips to Europe with Jessica? The new house you're buying to live with her? Michael stayed silent, which was more eloquent than any answer. You know what's saddest? Sarah continued. You didn't even ask how we'd live. Didn't inquire what school Alex would go to, what preschool for Lily. You just don't care. Not true, Michael flared up. I love my kids. Love them enough to see them once a month instead of the court-ordered twice. Sarah smiled bitterly. Enough to find a reason to cancel meetings at the last minute every time. I have work, Michael snapped. I'm providing for their future, their future. It's not just money, Patricia Ann said softly. It's your presence in their lives, your support, your example. She stood and approached her son, placing a hand on his shoulder. Michael, listen to an old woman. I'm 61. I've seen a lot in life, seen families fall apart and reunite, people make mistakes and fix them. It's never too late to make the right choice. Michael looked up at his mother, and for the first time that evening, doubt flickered in his eyes. What do you propose? He asked quietly. For starters, withdraw the eviction lawsuit, Patricia Ann said firmly. Let Sarah and the kids live here peacefully. If you want, you can charge Sarah rent, but don't throw them out. Michael pondered, tapping his fingers on the armrest. I can't just withdraw the lawsuit, he said finally. The house is needed as collateral for a new loan. Jessica and I plan to start our own business. Sarah shook her head. It's clear. Business with your new wife is more important than a roof for your kids. Don't twist it, Michael winced. I'm just explaining the situation. Patricia Ann looked at her son closely. What if your father and I give you money for that business in exchange for leaving the house to Sarah and the kids? Michael raised his eyebrows in surprise. You're willing to give me money after everything I've done, in your opinion? Not to you, Patricia Ann clarified. To the kids, so they have a home. She paused, then added, Your father and I were planning to sell the cabin. The area's developing rapidly now. Land prices have risen. We wanted to buy a place closer to you, to the grandkids, but we can give that money to you if you guarantee Sarah and the kids stay here. Sarah stared at her mother-in-law in shock. Patricia Ann, you can't. It's your cabin. You built it over so many years. A cabin is just walls, her mother-in-law said softly. Family, grandkids, that's the most precious thing your father and I have. Michael was silent, staring at the floor. Conflicting emotions clearly battled within him. I'll think about it, he said finally. I need time. We have time, Patricia Ann nodded. 2 weeks until eviction, but no more. At that moment, Lily peeked into the room. Dad, will you show me how this doll works? She's supposed to sing, but I can't find the button. Michael smiled, his face softening. Of course, baby. I'll help now. He stood and followed his daughter, clearly glad for a break from the heavy talk. Sarah looked at her mother-in-law with gratitude and worry. Are you really ready to sell the cabin? Patricia Ann sighed. If it comes to that, yes. But I hope it won't. Michael's not a bad person, Sarah dear. He's just confused. Give him time to process everything he heard today. Sarah shook her head skeptically, but stayed silent. No point arguing. Her mother-in-law would believe the best in her son anyway. That's maternal love, forgiving and blind to flaws. The evening continued with dinner, where Michael awkwardly tried to chat with the kids. Lily chattered non-stop, while Alex answered monosyllabically, if at all. Patricia Ann kept the conversation going, talking about life in the countryside, how Grandpa planted new apple trees at the cabin, how the neighbor's cat had kittens right in their shed. When dinner ended, Michael started to leave. He hugged Lily, shook Alex's reluctantly extended hand, kissed his mother's cheek, and nodded to Sarah. I'll call tomorrow, he told his mother. We need to talk more. Of course, son. Patricia Ann walked him to the door. I'll be waiting. When the door closed behind Michael, the house suddenly grew quiet. Sarah sent the kids to brush their teeth and get ready for bed, then started clearing the table. "Do you think he'll agree?" she asked her mother-in-law, gathering plates. Patricia Ann looked thoughtfully at the closed door. "I don't know, Sarah dear, but I saw him waver, and that's a good sign." The next 3 days passed in anxious waiting. Michael didn't call, and Patricia Ann began to worry. Every time the phone rang, she rushed to it. But it was either Sarah's colleagues, parents of her students, or just sales calls. On the 4th day, Patricia Ann couldn't take it and called her son herself. The phone rang for a long time, and she was about to hang up when Michael's voice answered. "Yes, Mom," he said wearily. "Sorry, I was going to call myself, but got swamped at work." "You promised to call the next day, Michael," his mother gently reproached. "I was worried." "Sorry." Sincerity rang in his voice. A big client backed out of a contract at work. Everyone's on edge. "I understand," Patricia Ann said, "but have you thought about our talk? About the offer regarding the house?" Michael sighed heavily. "I have, Mom, a lot. Honestly, I can't say I've reached a decision." "Michael," his mother's voice grew firmer, "time's passing. In 10 days, Sarah and the kids have to move out. They need to know what's ahead." "I know, Mom, I know," irritation crept into his voice. "I'm not idle. Talked to the lawyer about a possible delay. Turns out, if I withdraw the eviction suit now, I can't refile it later. The house would effectively stay with Sarah." "Isn't that what we want?" Patricia Ann asked. "For your kids to have a home?" "Yes, but—" Michael faltered. "It's hard to explain. Jessica, she's counting on this house for our business." "And did you tell her that because of it, your kids might end up in a dangerous neighborhood?" Michael paused, and that silence spoke volumes. "Michael," Patricia Ann spoke again, "come tonight. We'll have dinner together, talk calmly. Alex is even looking at your gaming console. I saw him take it out of the box when he thought no one was watching." "Really?" Hope flickered in Michael's voice. "He didn't throw it away?" "Of course not. He's hurt, but he still loves you. You're his father, and that won't change." "Okay," Michael said after a pause. "I'll come around 7, like last time." "Great," Patricia Ann brightened. "I'll bake your favorite lemon pie." "No need, Mom," Michael said. "Don't try to butter me up like when I was a kid." "It's not for you," his mother objected. "It's for the grandkids. Lily asked for something sweet this morning." When she ended the call, Sarah looked at her questioningly. "He's coming?" she asked, trying to hide hope in her voice. "Tonight." Her mother-in-law nodded. "I hope he's thought it over and made the right decision." Sarah just shrugged. In the 3 months since her husband left, she'd learned not to expect anything good from him. It hurt too much to be disappointed each time. The day flew by unnoticed. Patricia Ann baked the promised lemon pie, filling the house with a cozy aroma of vanilla and citrus. Sarah helped in the kitchen while tutoring Alex in math. The boy was struggling with fractions. Lily sat nearby, drawing in her sketchbook and periodically showing the adults her artistic achievements. At 6, they set the table. Sarah brought out the fancy china they hadn't used in ages. "Why such ceremony?" her mother-in-law wondered. "It's just a family dinner." "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Just felt like something special. Maybe this is the last dinner in this house." Patricia Ann squeezed her hand encouragingly. "Don't say that. Everything will be fine, you'll see." At exactly 7, the doorbell rang. This time, Alex reacted first. He peeked from his room, where he was playing the new console, and looked warily at his mother. "Is that Dad?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded. "Yes, he promised to come." Alex pursed his lips and returned to his room, but left the door ajar, as if leaving himself an option. Patricia Ann opened the door. Michael stood on the threshold, holding a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. He looked tired and somehow lost. "Hi," he said, kissing his mother's cheek. "Sorry if I'm late. Traffic." "You're not late," Patricia Ann smiled. "Exactly 7. Michael entered, nodded to Sarah, and handed her the flowers. "These are for you. Your favorite lilies." Sarah took the bouquet, barely holding back a sarcastic comment. Indeed, lilies were her favorites. Once Michael gave them to her every anniversary. Then the tradition faded, replaced by obligatory gifts like candy or appliances. "Thanks," she said reservedly. "Come in." Dinner's on the table. Lily, hearing her father's voice, ran from the kitchen. "Dad, you came again." "Hi, Princess." He scooped up his daughter. "How's your new doll?" "She's the best," Lily exclaimed. "We play Kingdom, and I taught her to sing songs." "Really?" Michael smiled. "Show me later." He set his daughter down and headed to Alex's room. Knocked on the half-open door. "Alex, can I come in?" The boy sat on the bed with a controller in hand. On the TV screen, some hero in fantasy armor battled a dragon. "I see you unpacked the console," Michael noted, sitting on the bed's edge. "How do you like it?" Alex shrugged, not looking away from the screen. "Fine. Is this Chronicles of Arden?" Michael nodded at the screen. "Cool game. Heard the guys at the office talking about it." "Uh-huh," Alex muttered, pressing buttons. An awkward pause hung. Michael watched his son, unsure what else to say. Finally, Alex paused the game and turned to his father. "Why did you come?" The question caught Michael off guard. "Why?" "To see you and Lily, talk to Mom and Grandma." "About what?" Alex looked at him directly and demandingly. "About how we still have to leave here." Michael sighed. "Alex, it's a complicated situation." "You always say that," his son interrupted. "Complicated situation. What's complicated about it? You left us, now you're kicking us out. Simple." "Not everything's that simple, son." Michael tried to place a hand on Alex's shoulder, but he pulled away. "Adults have problems, misunderstandings. Sometimes people separate." "Grandma and Grandpa didn't separate," Alex noted. "They've been together 40 years. Grandma said so." Michael had no answer. Indeed, his parents had lived together 4 decades, despite all hardships, arguments, and differences. "It's different for everyone, Alex," he finally said. "Not everyone is as lucky as Grandma and Grandpa." "And we weren't lucky with Mom and Lily, huh?" Bitterness tinged the boy's voice. "So now we have to move to some dumb neighborhood where local kids will beat me up and Lily can't play in the yard." Michael stared at his son. "Who told you that?" "No one. I overheard Mom talking to the realtor on the phone. That neighborhood's called sketchy. People get robbed and beaten all the time, and in the new school half the class are repeaters because they skip lessons." Michael frowned. He hadn't known these details. Sarah said the neighborhood wasn't the safest, but he thought she was exaggerating to guilt him. "Dad," Alex suddenly asked, and through his feigned sternness broke childish vulnerability. "Do you really not love us anymore?" Michael felt a lump in his throat. "What are you saying, son?" He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder anyway, and this time Alex didn't pull away. "I'll always love you. You're my kids, that won't change." "Then why are you letting us move where it's dangerous?" Alex looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "Grandma said when you love someone, you protect them from everything bad." Michael had no answer. He hugged his son, and to his surprise, the boy didn't resist. They sat like that silently for a few minutes until Patricia Ann's voice called from the kitchen. "Boys, dinner's getting cold." Alex pulled away and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "I'll come soon." "Just save the game." Michael nodded and left the room, deep in thought. His son's words struck a chord in his soul, one that seemed long silent. In the kitchen sat Sarah, Patricia Ann, and Lily. The table was set festively. White tablecloth, fancy plates, crystal glasses they got for their wedding and rarely used since. "Sit down, Michael." Patricia Ann pointed to the chair next to her. "I made your favorite beef stew." "Thanks, Mom." Michael sat looking closely at Sarah. "Nice setup. Like for special days." "Maybe this is a special day," Patricia Ann noted, ladling stew into bowls. "The day we all decide how to move forward." During dinner they talked neutral topics. Patricia Ann shared countryside news about neighbor Aunt Nora, who at 83 mastered a smartphone and now surfs the internet. About how Grandpa plans to get a new dog to replace old Buddy who died last fall. About how niece Lucy got into medical school and proudly tells everyone she'll be a new rural doctor. Lily enthusiastically shared her preschool stories, interrupting Grandma now and then. Alex ate silently, giving short answers occasionally. Sarah was tense and barely joined the conversation, just ensuring full plates and that Lily didn't stain her new dress with stew. When the main course was done, Patricia Ann grandly brought out her lemon pie. "Here, as promised," she said, slicing the fragrant dessert. "With lemon custard, like you love, Michael." "Like in childhood," Michael smiled, taking a plate with a slice. "I remember you always baked it for my birthday." "And for our anniversaries," Sarah added quietly. 15 years straight. Michael looked at her in surprise, as if not expecting her to remember such details. "Yes, exactly," he nodded. "Tradition." When the pie was finished, Patricia Ann sent the kids to the living room for cartoons, and the adults stayed in the kitchen. "Well, Michael?" Patricia Ann asked directly. "Have you decided?" Michael looked at his mother, then Sarah, and finally said, "I talked to the lawyer. There are a few options." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket's inner pocket. "Option 1. I withdraw the eviction suit, but the house formally stays mine. We sign a rent-free use agreement with Sarah for 5 years, meaning you can live here, but the house is still mine." Sarah frowned. "And after 5 years?" "After 5 years," Michael continued, "we can review the agreement. Maybe by then I can buy you separate housing or transfer this house to the kids." "So a delay," Patricia Ann stated, "not solving the problem but postponing it." "Yes, but a lot can change in 5 years," Michael argued. "Alex will grow up, Lily will start school. Maybe Sarah can buy something herself. Or you'll decide to evict us again when you need money," Sarah said bitterly, "and we'll be in limbo again." Michael shook his head. "I won't do that. I promise." "Sorry, but it's hard to believe your promises." Sarah looked away. "You promised to be with me in sickness and health, for better or worse. Where are those promises now?" Michael looked embarrassed but continued. "Option 2. I sell this house and buy you another in a normal neighborhood. Not the one you looked at, but a decent place with a good school." "And is that beneficial for you?" Patricia Ann asked bluntly. "You said this house is needed for your business." "I talked to Jessica," Michael admitted reluctantly. Explained the situation. "She's not thrilled, but understands kids are important." "How noble of her." Sarah couldn't resist sarcasm. "Sarah, don't," her mother-in-law stopped her gently. "Let's hear Michael out." Michael nodded gratefully to his mother and continued. "Third option. We can wait while I save money for a new house for you. It'll take about a year. Until then, you can live here." "And if you can't save?" Patricia Ann asked. "If the business fails or other expenses arise?" Michael spread his hands. "Then back to option 1 or 2. So no guarantee," Sarah summed up, "and another whole year in limbo, not knowing what's next." Heavy silence fell in the room. Each option had flaws, and none gave full certainty for tomorrow. "There's another option." Patricia Ann broke the silence. "Your father and I sell the cabin and give you the money for your business, and you transfer this house to the kids with Sarah's right to live until they're adults. That would be fair." Michael looked at his mother in surprise. "You're seriously ready to sell the cabin?" "Yes," Patricia Ann said firmly. "For us, the kids are more important than the cabin. And besides, Robert's getting older. It's harder for him to maintain the plot, dig beds." "But you built it over so many years." Michael shook his head. "Dad nailed every board himself." "Material things are nothing compared to loved ones' well-being," her mother-in-law said. "Your father agrees with me. I called him yesterday, told him the situation." "And what did he say?" Michael tensed, knowing his father's tough nature. "Said, 'Tell Mikey that if he doesn't come to his senses, I'll come and personally kick his butt, no matter his 36 years. Patricia Ann smiled. But then added that of course we can sell the cabin. We'll have to eventually anyway. We're not eternal, and it's far from you." Michael lowered his eyes, clearly feeling mixed emotions. "Mum, I can't accept such a sacrifice." "It's not a sacrifice, Michael," Patricia Ann objected. "It's an investment in our grandkids' future. And maybe yours too." She looked meaningfully at her son, and he understood the unspoken thought. Perhaps one day he'd return to the family, and this house would be home for them all again. "I need to think," Michael said finally. "It's a serious decision." "Of course think," his mother agreed, "but not too long. Time's ticking, and the kids shouldn't live in uncertainty." At that moment, Alex peeked into the kitchen. "Can I come in?" Lily fell asleep on the couch, and I'm bored alone. Of course, son, Sarah shifted, making room beside her. We're just wrapping up. Alex sat and looked attentively at the adults. Did you decide where we'll live? Not yet, Michael replied, but we're working on it. I promise you won't go to that dangerous neighborhood. Alex nodded, as if accepting his father's promise as given. Good, because Max, my classmate, lives there and he's been mugged twice. Took his phone and bike, and some jerks followed his older sister after school. She had to run into a store and call security. Michael paled hearing these details. He shot a quick glance at Sarah, who looked at him with silent reproach. That won't happen, he said firmly. I promise. Alex shrugged. Okay, just wanted you to know. He turned to his grandma. Is there any lemon pie left? I'd like another piece. Of course, sweetie. Patricia Ann smiled, cutting a generous slice for her grandson. Eat up. When Alex left with his plate of pie, Michael sighed heavily. I didn't know it was that bad in that neighborhood. Because you didn't care, Sarah said simply. You were indifferent. Not true, Michael objected. I thought you were exaggerating. To pressure me. To pressure. Sarah smiled bitterly. Michael, I've tried for 3 months to get through to you, explain we can't move there with the kids. But you brushed it off, said I was overreacting. Michael had no response. He really hadn't delved into the new housing details, thinking his financial compensation should suffice for a normal place. Sorry, he finally said, I was wrong. This simple admission of guilt sounded so unexpected that Sarah looked up at him in surprise. I'll fix this, Michael continued more confidently. I promise, you won't go to a dangerous neighborhood and won't be evicted from this house at all. I'll sort it out. Patricia Ann looked at her son hopefully. Really, Michael? You won't change your mind later? I won't, he said firmly. I've realized I was wrong, in everything. He glanced at his watch. I have to go, but I'll call tomorrow, and we'll arrange a meeting with the lawyer. Need to formalize everything properly. When he left, Sarah and Patricia Ann sat in the kitchen a long time, discussing this surprising turn. Do you think he'll really change his decision? Sarah asked, still unable to believe it. I think yes, her mother-in-law nodded. I saw his eyes when Alex talked about that neighborhood. He was really scared for you, so not all is lost. Sarah shook her head. Even if he leaves us the house, it won't bring back our family. Who knows? Patricia Ann smiled mysteriously. Another's soul is a mystery, especially a man's tangled in his feelings. Sarah wanted to argue, but stayed silent. Too many shocks for one evening, and too little hope to let it grow and make her heart vulnerable again. The next few days flew by in tense waiting. Michael, as promised, called the next day. They agreed to meet the lawyer in 3 days. All this time, Patricia Ann stayed with Sarah and the kids, helping around the house, picking up Alex from school and Lily from preschool, cooking lunches and dinners. Outwardly calm, but Sarah noticed her mother-in-law occasionally stepping onto the balcony with the phone, probably calling her husband for advice. The evening before the lawyer meeting, Michael called unexpectedly. Sarah, it's me, he said without preamble. Tomorrow Robert James is coming to the meeting. I'll pick him up and bring him. Your father? Sarah was surprised. But why? He has high blood pressure. He can't get stressed. He insisted himself. Michael's voice sounded guilty. Said he wants to be involved personally. I tried to talk him out of it, but you know Dad. Sarah knew. Robert James, a retired military engineer, was a man of firm principles and iron will. Once he decided something, no convincing him otherwise. Okay, she said, give him our regards from me and the kids. Will do, Michael paused. How are Alex and Lily? Fine, Sarah replied reservedly. Alex plays your console all the time. The teacher even called, asked if something happened. He's studying better, more focused. Really? Genuine joy sounded in Michael's voice. That's great. And Lily, still running around with the new doll, named it Jessica. Imagine, Sarah couldn't resist the jab. Says it's the prettiest name she knows. Michael got embarrassed but said nothing. An awkward pause hung. Okay, see you tomorrow, he finally said. Meeting at the notary at 11, as agreed. See you tomorrow, Sarah echoed. When she told her mother-in-law about Robert James's arrival, she just nodded. I thought so. He hinted yesterday he wants to personally dot all the I's, and said something about looking a man in the eyes when deciding family fate. He's not too angry at Michael, Sarah asked worriedly. He has a heart condition. Angry, of course, Patricia Ann sighed, but more disappointed. He was always proud of his son, held him up as an example. And now, it's like a personal failure for him. The next morning, Sarah dressed carefully. Wore a strict suit she saved. For important client meetings, did subtle makeup, styled her hair. Patricia Ann stayed with the kids. Alex skipped school, claiming a headache, and Lily was fussy from morning, refusing preschool. Everything will be fine, her mother-in-law said, seeing Sarah off. Don't worry, Robert's strict but fair. He'll do everything right. The notary's office was in the city centre, in an old mansion with stucco on the facade. Sarah arrived a bit early and now nervously shifted in the spacious lobby, examining antique engravings on the walls. At exactly 11, the door opened, and Michael entered with a tall, grey-haired man of military bearing. Robert James hadn't changed much in the 6 months Sarah hadn't seen him. Still fit, straight-backed, with a sharp, piercing gaze. "Hello, Sarah dear." He approached and hugged her tightly. "How I've missed you all." "Hello, Robert James," Sarah smiled, feeling unexpected relief from his presence. "We've missed you too." "Well?" Her father-in-law stepped back and looked her up and down. "You look good. Just lost a lot of weight." "Patty says you're working 2 jobs. Michael's completely lost his conscience, huh?" He glanced quickly at his son, standing a bit aside, fiddling with a jacket button. "Dad, not now," Michael said quietly. "They're waiting, of course." Robert James nodded. "For our money, they won't even make us wait." He headed first to the notary's office, leaving Sarah and Michael to follow. The notary, a plump woman in her 50s, with attentive eyes behind glasses, greeted them warmly. "Good day. Come in, sit down. All documents are ready. Just need to review and sign." They sat around the massive table. The notary laid out the papers. "So per our preliminary agreement, Mr. Johnson withdraws his claims for evicting his ex-wife and minor children from the house at the address." She read the address and continued. "Instead, the house is re-registered as shared ownership, 1/4 share to each minor child. The remaining half stays in Mr. Johnson's ownership." Sarah looked at Michael in surprise. They hadn't discussed this option. It was either a rent-free use agreement or full transfer to the kids. "Excuse me," she said, "but we agreed on something else." No, Robert James interjected. "It's correct. Michael and I discussed it yesterday. Half the house stays his, half goes to the kids. And you, Sarah dear, get lifelong right to use the entire house as the legal representative of the minor children." Michael nodded. "Yes, we decided it's fair. The kids get their legal housing, and I formally keep some rights for the future." "For the future," Sarah repeated. "Yes," Michael looked away. "Who knows? Life's long. Anything can happen." Robert James snorted. "Why's he hemming like a shy girl? Say it straight. Hoping you'll come to your senses someday and return to the family. Right." Michael blushed but didn't deny. "And also," the notary continued, "per the second agreement, Mr. Johnson agrees to monthly child support payments in the amount of—" She named a sum that made Sarah raise her eyebrows in surprise. It was almost twice the legal minimum. "What's this?" she asked, looking at Michael. "Child support," he said simply, "for the kids' maintenance." "But the amount—" "The amount's right," Robert James cut in. "I calculated personally how much 2 kids need, considering inflation, rising prices, etc. Michael earns well. He can afford to support the kids properly. Right, son?" Michael nodded, not looking up. "And what about the cabin money?" Sarah asked, recalling Patricia Ann's offer. "You said—" "We won't sell the cabin," Robert James said firmly. "That's Patty's and my retirement, if you will. And Mikey will have to clean up the mess he made himself, without parental money." Michael glanced quickly at his father, but didn't argue. Apparently they'd had this talk, and Robert James's position was unshakable. "If everyone agrees with the terms, please sign the documents," the notary said, handing out pens. Signing took about half an hour. When all formalities were done, the notary congratulated them on successfully resolving the conflict and wished them well. "Well, that's it," Robert James said as they stepped outside. Justice prevailed, though not fully. Now let's go to your place. Want to hug the grandkids, miss them. Sarah looked uncertainly at Michael. You coming too? If you'll allow, he said quietly. She shrugged. The kids will be happy. Especially Lily. They drove home in Michael's car, a spacious SUV bought last year. The whole way, Robert James, in the front seat, talked about countryside news, neighbors, how he and Patricia Ann planned to set up a greenhouse and grow special tomato varieties. At our age, need to learn new hobbies, he said, or brains ossify and you become an old grump who only watches TV and gripes about the government. Sarah listened half-heartedly, lost in thought. Everything happened so fast and unexpectedly, she hadn't fully grasped it. The house is half the kids. She has legal right to live there, no one can evict them anymore. And the child support Michael set would let her quit one job and spend more time with the kids. When they arrived, Patricia Ann met them at the door. Seeing her husband, she threw her arms around his neck. Bob, how glad I am to see you. And are you, Patty? He hugged his wife tightly. All good? Now all good. She stepped back and looked closely at her husband, then son and Sarah. I see by your faces it went well. Well, Robert James nodded. Your son finally acted like a man. Gave half the house to the kids, set proper child support, withdrew the eviction. Thank God, Patricia Ann said sincerely, crossing herself. I was so afraid he'd balk at the last minute. Didn't balk, Robert James snorted. Though God knows a couple times I wanted to smack him when he started hemming about his rights. Dad, Michael said reproachfully, I didn't say that. Didn't say, but thought, his father cut off. I see right through you, son. Always have. At that moment, Alex and Lily ran from the living room. Seeing Grandpa, they squealed and rushed to him. Grandpa! Grandpa's here, Lily shouted, hanging on Robert James's neck. Alex, more reserved, hugged his grandpa tightly, burying his face in his belly. Here are my treasures. Robert James lifted Lily and hugged Alex with his free arm. How you've grown. Alex, you're almost as tall as me. And you, Lily, so heavy now. I'm an old man. You could strain me. Not true, Lily protested. You're the strongest grandpa in the world. Stronger than Dad. She suddenly noticed Michael standing aside and exclaimed, Dad, you came too. She jumped from Grandpa's arms and ran to her father. Michael caught her and spun her around. Of course I came, Princess. How could I miss Grandpa's arrival? Alex didn't show such enthusiasm at seeing his father, but nodded and said reservedly, Hi, Dad. Hi, son. Michael ruffled his hair. How's the console? Like it? Yeah, cool, Alex nodded. I already beat the first level in Chronicles of Arden. Seriously? Michael admired. I heard the first level's really hard. Many get stuck for weeks. I found a secret passage, Alex said proudly, through the troll cave. Need a special rune there. Awesome. Michael looked at his son with genuine admiration. Maybe show me later. I wanted to try that game too. Alex's face brightened. Really? Sure, I'll show. Patricia Ann smiled, watching this scene, and turned to her husband. Well, Bob, tea time? I baked your favorite apple cinnamon pie. Definitely, Patty. Robert James kissed his wife's cheek, but first want to give the grandkids treats. Bags in the car. Michael, go get it. Michael obediently went and returned with a large bag, handing it solemnly to his father. He unzipped it and started pulling out packages. So, this for Lily. New dress, your grandma embroidered it. This for Alex. Wood-burning kit. Thought it's time you learn a man's craft, grandson. This for Sarah. Wool shawl so you don't freeze evenings. This for Patty. Strawberry jam from neighbor Nora. She asked to pass it on. And something for Michael, too. He pulled the last package and handed it to his son. Michael unwrapped it and froze. Inside was an old, worn book. This is... He looked up at his father. The Children of Captain Grant. My favorite childhood book. The very one, Robert James nodded. You read it every evening until the spine fell apart. I rebound it then, remember? I remember, Michael said quietly, gently flipping pages. You taught me a real man must always keep his word. Like Captain Grant, who crossed half the world to return to his family. Exactly. Robert James placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Maybe worth rereading? Michael nodded silently, not looking up. After tea, which stretched into evening, Robert James announced he and Patricia Ann were staying overnight. Too late to return to the countryside. I'll sleep on the living room couch, he said. And Patty with Lily, as usual? Maybe, Michael hesitated. Maybe I can stay too. Sleep in the armchair. Haven't been at a family dinner in so long. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Sarah frowned, ready to refuse, but suddenly Alex said, "Stay, Dad. I wanted to show you how to beat the second level in the game. Tough boss at the end. I barely did it." Michael's face lit up. "Thanks, son. Definitely show me." The evening passed unexpectedly warm and cozy. They all watched the old classic movie, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which Robert James loved. Then Michael sat with Alex at the console until late, battling virtual monsters, quietly chatting and sharing tips. Lily fell asleep in her grandma's arms, and Patricia Ann carried her to bed. Robert James and Sarah talked quietly in the kitchen, recalling past family holidays and cabin trips. When everyone finally dispersed to sleeping spots, Sarah noticed Michael standing by the living room window, thoughtfully gazing at the night city. She approached him. "Everything okay?" He turned and she saw in his eyes something she hadn't seen in a long time: longing and remorse. "You know," Michael said quietly, "I only now realized what I lost. Today, when we all sat together, watched the movie, laughed, I suddenly understood I traded all this for nothing, for an illusion." Sarah stayed silent, afraid to shatter the fragile moment with a careless word. Something in her heart stirred at his words. "Forgive me," Michael continued, looking her straight in the eyes. "I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to know. I was wrong, in everything wrong. And if someday you can, if we can." He didn't finish, but Sarah understood what he meant. "Not now, Michael," she said softly. "Too soon. Too much has happened. We both need time." Michael nodded. "I understand, and I'm ready to wait as long as needed." He paused, then added, "Jessica and I broke up. Yesterday, I realized it's all wrong. I was chasing some illusion of youth, novelty, and actually betrayed the most precious thing I had." Sarah looked at him in surprise. "You broke up? But what about the business, the house, plans?" "To hell with it all," Michael waved. "Business can start later with other partners. And the house? Well, I'll stay with a friend for now. Or rent something cheap." Sarah didn't know whether to believe him. The change seemed too abrupt, but something in his eyes, his voice convinced her of his sincerity. "Good night, Michael," she said, stepping to the door. "See you in the morning." "Good night, Sarah," he replied, and her heart skipped a beat at that familiar, homey address. "Thanks for letting me stay." She nodded and left, quietly closing the door. Chaos reigned in her mind. Too many events, too many emotions for one day, but deep in her soul, a tiny spark of hope ignited. Maybe not all is lost. Maybe their story isn't over. Sarah shook her head, chasing away those thoughts. Too soon, still too painful. Can't let her heart become vulnerable to new disappointments again. But still, that night she fell asleep without pills for the first time in ages, with a light heart and hope for the future. Whatever their relationship with Michael would be, the main thing, the kids are now safe under a reliable roof. And that's already a lot. 2 months passed, spring confidently claimed its rights. Tree buds swelled, grass greened, and even passers-by's grim faces brightened with each sunny day. Sarah and the kids' life gradually settled into a new routine. When the initial surprise from the sudden turn faded, everyone began adjusting to the new way. Sarah, receiving increased child support, quit her side job and now spent more time with the kids. Alex, to the teacher's delight, noticeably improved in studies. Lily still chattered joyfully from morning to night, but now Dad sounded more often in her talks. Michael really kept his word. He visited the kids regularly. First once a week, then more. Brought groceries, toys, helped Alex with homework, read bedtime stories to Lily. Sometimes stayed for dinner, sometimes till late, playing console with his son or building a dollhouse with his daughter. His relationship with Sarah remained politely reserved. They talked only about the kids, household matters, avoiding personal topics. But sometimes, when he thought Sarah didn't see, she caught his attentive gaze, full of longing and hope. On one such evening, as Michael was leaving, Alex suddenly asked, "Dad, will you come with us to the cabin for Memorial Day?" Michael looked at Sarah in confusion. "I don't know. You're going to the cabin?" "Yes," Sarah nodded. "Patricia Ann called yesterday, invited us, says the first strawberries are ripening and Robert James misses the grandkids." "That would be great," Michael said uncertainly. "But I don't want to impose." "Dad, please." Lily hugged his legs. "Grandpa said he'll show you his new beehive. And hang swings for me and Alex." "Yeah, it'd be good if you helped Dad with those swings," Sarah suddenly said. "It's hard for him alone. And you're an engineer after all." Michael looked at her with surprise and hope. "You really don't mind?" "Don't mind," she shrugged. "The kids will like it." From that talk, something began changing in their relationship. Michael started coming not just for the kids but to help Sarah. Fixed a leaking faucet, nailed a wobbly shelf, took the car to the shop. Did all that was once a natural part of their life together. The cabin trip happened on the first Memorial Day weekend. The day was surprisingly warm and clear. Patricia Ann met them on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "You're here, my dears." She hugged the grandkids first, then Sarah, and after hesitating, her son. Just in time. Pies fresh from the oven. Robert James came from the workshop with a hammer. "Here are the helpers." He shook his son's hand firmly. "Michael, good you came. Help me with the swings for the little ones." The whole day passed in pleasant chores. Sarah and Patricia Ann cooked lunch. Kids ran around the garden. Men built swings on the old apple tree. By evening, when all was done and the family gathered at the long porch table, Robert James pulled out a bottle of homemade wine. "Well, to the gathering," he proposed, pouring the ruby drink into glasses. "To us all together." "To the gathering," Patricia Ann nodded, raising her glass, "and to not parting again." She looked meaningfully at her son and daughter-in-law. After dinner, when kids slept and elders went inside for their favorite show, Michael and Sarah stayed alone on the porch. Spring twilight enveloped the garden. Soft music floated from the open window. Patricia Ann had turned on the old record player they brought from the parental attic. "Remember we danced to this song at our wedding?" Michael suddenly asked, listening to the melody. Sarah nodded. Of course she remembered. "How Young We Were," the song they chose for their first dance, because both loved that romantic ache in the singer's voice. "Sarah," Michael said quietly, looking into her eyes, "I've thought a lot lately. About us, the kids, what I did, and realized I made the biggest mistake of my life. I lost the most precious, you and our family." Sarah stayed silent, fearing to break the fragile moment with any word. "I don't ask you to forgive me right away," Michael continued. "I know I caused too much pain. But maybe you'll let me try to fix everything. Start over?" He carefully took her hand. "I'm scared, Michael," Sarah admitted honestly, "scared to believe and be disappointed again. Scared this is temporary nostalgia, and then you'll meet another Jessica and—" "I won't," Michael said firmly. "You see, it was like a spell. I thought I was seeking a new life, but really just running from responsibility, from difficulties any family has." He paused, then added, "Remember the song, How Young We Were, how sincerely we loved. I want to bring back that feeling. Not youth, you can't return it and no need, but sincerity, purity of relations, trust." Sarah finally looked up at him. She suddenly recalled him 20 years ago. Young engineer with burning eyes, full of plans and hopes. The guy who once won her heart with his reliability and warmth. "I don't know, Michael," she said honestly. "I need time." "I understand," he nodded. "And I'm ready to wait as long as needed." He stood and extended his hand. "Shall we dance?" "For starters." And she, hesitating a moment, placed her palm in his. 2 days later, as it was time to return to the city, Michael approached Sarah with an unexpected proposal. "You know, I thought, maybe I can move back. Not right away, of course. For starters, I can live in the living room on the couch, just to be closer to the kids, help with homework, drop Lily at preschool when you're at work." Sarah pondered. These 2 days at the cabin changed a lot. She saw how happy the kids were with both parents around, how Alex's eyes lit up when his father showed him how to hold a fishing rod properly, how Lily laughed as Dad and Grandpa swung her on the new swings. And she herself. She caught herself feeling truly happy for the first time in months, complete, whole, like the missing puzzle piece of their family finally in place. "Okay," she finally said, "but on one condition." "Anything," Michael agreed quickly. "We start from a clean slate, as if meeting anew. No old grudges, but no old merits either. Everything proved by actions, not words." Michael beamed. "Agreed, absolutely agreed." Patricia Ann, watching from the house window, nodded satisfied and crossed herself. "Well, old man," she said to her husband beside her, "seems our boy finally grew up, 40 years old." "About time," Robert James snorted, but his eyes shone suspiciously. "Right they say, patience and hard work conquer all." 6 months later, on a warm September day, Michael and Sarah stood at the school gates, seeing Alex off to 5th grade. Nearby twirled Lily in a fancy dress with huge bows. Her first day in 1st grade. "Nervous?" Michael asked, taking Sarah's hand. "A bit," she admitted. "But now that we're together, everything will be fine." Michael squeezed her palm and smiled. "Yes, now everything will be fine, because they've understood the main thing. Family isn't just a shared roof, not just a stamp in a passport. Family is patience and forgiveness, willingness to change for loved ones, and ability to see the essential beyond daily bustle." And though their path to each other was tough, now they valued their happiness doubly, knowing how easy to lose and how hard to regain. Patricia Ann, looking at their photos in the family album, thanked fate each time for her unexpected visit that cold February day, starting a new chapter in their family's life. A chapter where love proved stronger than grudges, and forgiveness more important than pride.